Hello, I'm Eric Devin, and welcome to the season's penultimate Get French Football News preview show. Joining me as always are Adam White and Nathan Staples, as we look at French side's European exploits for the final time this season. Monaco lost 2-1 at Juventus, going out 4-1 on aggregate as Leonardo Jardim, with Nabil Dirar late absence through injury, opted for an experimental 3-4-1-2 formation. Lyon, by contrast, played a more conventional 4-2-3-1, but it wasn't enough as they lost 3-1 to Ajax to go out 5-4 on aggregate. That's all the news for now. Do be sure to follow us on Twitter at GFFN and to visit our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com. Let's start with the events at the Juventus Stadium on Tuesday, gents. Nathan, there was quite the furore on Twitter as many debated Jardim's motivations in terms of personnel and tactical system before the match. Well, the result wasn't what Monaco needed to progress. Was the manager right to experiment for this match?
Yes and no. I think the idea to try and do a 3-5-2, which I'm pretty sure he did very early on this season as well, was an interesting one to try and match up both with Juventus, although we may never know if that was his initial intentions after Dirar obviously didn't start, and the graphics for a lot of the things were from both Monaco and from the UEFA team sheets both showed the usual 4-4-2s or an adaptation of that. But I thought it was a good idea to do that, to try and use the best of Mondi and Sidibe in the sense of an attacking sense and get on the front foot in the start. And they did that in the first 20 minutes and really pressed high, created a couple of decent chances. But the problem is they don't, with this and against this Juventus side, is if you don't score within that first 20-minute segment where you maybe get them a little bit hurried, you maybe get them a little bit rushed, then you're always fighting an uphill battle against a team that just seems to suffocate games when they need to. And it's a terrific thing to see, really, in all honesty, with a club that size. And I've not seen a team in a long while play that sort of style where they are so dangerous in so many different areas of the field, and in a sense that they're so great at defending, but they're also so clever on the counter and can sort of spring attacks from almost anywhere, at least, anyway. As for personnel-wise, you do have to question why Fabinho didn't play at all, regardless of formation. He's the most versatile player that Monaco have got. He's been terrific this season. He's probably, I would argue, their best player this season. And even in a 3-5-2, he can play in midfield. He could play as the right wing-back, as maybe probably a better defensive option than Sidibe, as well as being I would say, a more experienced person at this kind of occasion, at least, anyway, from a Monaco point of view. I just can't see the argument of why you wouldn't have played him. Jean Moutinho was okay, and he's great at controlling a game, but he didn't have the best of games. He was very anonymous. Bakayoko was a little bit wanting again. The second time this has happened really against Juventus, where he's really struggled with the overwhelming amount of players from midfield and from attack. He's sort of been stuck in the middle, and that he's not really found where he needed to be at the right times, and he's been caught out a few times. So the reason not to play Fabinho does strike me. And then the same with, although he's not 100% fit, why do you not risk Mendy if he's available for the bench as well? It's good that he did start in the end, and he did seem to tire quite in the second half, as a lot of the Monaco players did, but I would have still started him anyway because he's so good, and he can be so good, and especially from crossing opportunities and the like. But at the same time, you think that a Juventus side is so strong in the air at that back three, and they were all terrific again last night, that it's a tough one. He needed to try something different. We mentioned this on Monday, that he needed to try and find a new way to beat this Juventus team, which no one's figured out. And unfortunately, it just wasn't right. But yeah, with the league practically tied up in the sense that one more win pretty much does it, I think he maybe should have risked some of the bigger players and a little bit more, and it still does scratch your head of why he didn't play Fabinho at all. But as soon as Juventus scored, the game was really over, unfortunately.
Adam, what about you? Do you think I advanced the theory on Twitter, and I stand by it, that I think Jardim, he may have been trying with the initial 11. This is before Dirar was injured. I think he was rotating for the league. It wasn't necessarily to get to try something different against Juventus. I think he was simply trying to play a 4-4-2. He switched to the 3-5-2 when Dirar went off. What do you think? What was he trying to do? And along with that, yeah, this was the Champions League semifinal, but it was still long odds. is he right to do that? I know that 1 win in 3 matches doesn't seem that difficult for Monaco, but Lille, Rennes, and Saint-Etienne can all be tricky in their own way.
Yeah, that is true. Personally, I think it's the sort of determining factor here is Fabinho's absence. When I first saw the team, the shape of the team at least, I felt he was trying to sort of match Juventus up a little bit, and try and not necessarily beat them at their own game, but try and sort of plug the gaps that were sort of mined, if you like, in the first leg, especially from Dani Alves' point of view, who was fantastic again. So I don't know if that particularly worked, but it felt like he was trying to sort of match them up man for man and go for a similar formation. But Fabinho's absence is a very strange one, because you would feel like if he was going to play his first choice team, and if he was going to take this game as importantly as he did the first leg, and even though they were 2-0 down, I still feel like he probably would have taken this game very seriously and would have still seen it as an opportunity to go through, that Fabinho would have played, because he's their most important player. He's the best player in these bigger games. He's in midfield generally. He really runs their midfield and dominates midfield battles even when he's outnumbered, as we've talked a lot about on the pod. He's a very, very, very good player at 23. He's got a great career ahead of him. So I would have expected him to play in this game, whether or not he switched formation. So that to me suggests that perhaps there's an element of him being a little cautious about the league. But then that would be an odd decision to make, given that if they win the game at the weekend against Lille, they've practically won the title. They'll be 6 points. If they win that game in hand, which effectively is against Lille, they win ahead. They'll be 6 points ahead with 2 games to play with a much superior goal difference. So they only really need one more win. So you would feel like that the 3 games after, yes, they can be. That you're absolutely right. They can be difficult opponents, but you would have fancied them to get at least 1 win from those 3 games. So I would have thought that, although the margin was difficult, it wasn't entirely unfeasible. We've seen, much bigger comebacks this season and in the past too. So there was still a glimmer of hope for Monaco, even though Juventus are perhaps the type of team that they really struggle against. So it's a very strange decision, and the motivation behind it is very difficult to put your finger on. I think that's it's a very odd decision all round. I think, from my point of view, I'd like to have seen Monaco. The way Monaco win games is to be Monaco, and I know that they do need to find new ways to win games. And perhaps late next season, if they're going to be doing the same thing and fighting on these fronts, they're going to need to, perhaps play badly and win, which they haven't really been doing. They've been playing very well and winning most of their games, which is obviously brilliant. But they're going to need to find those new ways to win games. I just felt like it had a little bit, if they are taking this game seriously, it smacked a little bit of the Blanc 3-5-2 at Manchester City last year, when he felt like he needed to try something different, and obviously to a lesser extent here, because there are perhaps a few caveats to that with the league and with the fact that Juventus play this formation anyway. But the Blanc's move to 3-5-2 for PSG at Manchester City was completely suicidal, and it was untried and untested, and something that the players themselves weren't like used to, or it doesn't really make sense for the team itself. Which, from my point of view, it didn't make sense for Monaco's team. So it was an odd decision, and the motivation behind it would be very difficult to put a finger on. The absence of Lamar as well is very strange. You would have felt like if he was really prioritising this game, Fabinho and Lamar, the 2 players you want, even in a 3-5-2. Because Lamar can play more centrally. You can have Fabinho holding that midfield. I would have thought Bakayoko and Martina would be the 2 to drop out. But so yeah, I have a feeling it's probably a little bit, as Nathan says, a little bit mixture of the 2. So yeah, hopefully Monaco will recover from this, and hopefully that it won't be too much of a dent on their confidence, and they'll still take the league title we expect them to do. But a very interesting decision from Jardine. I'm not sure it was the right time to try and change tactics.
Yeah. I do want to make a very quick point, if that's all right, of something I might have tried, in the sense that it was similar to the idea that he played against Paris Saint-Germain earlier in the season in the Stade Louis II. What I would have tried is, I think the 3-5-2 was the right kind of idea, but with the players they've got, I think they should have stuck with Fabinho and Bakayoko as a defensive 2 still in front of that back 3. So it gives you a solid base to build from, and 2 players that are used to playing together and working in that role. Still with a wing back, so Mondi and Sidibe, but obviously with Fabinho in there, it gives Sidibe more cover, because obviously he can be caught. Well, he was really enjoying his moment on the wing, I think, wasn't he, last night, to be fair? But maybe take a striker out. The problem was that Falcao was so close to the strikers, the defenders so often, and those defenders are so great at being in that 3 as a solid base and together. Maybe try and play Lamar and Bernardo Silva as more central attacking midfielders, similar to what they tried to do against Paris Saint-Germain at that in that game at Stade Louis II, and have Mbappe as the man up front on his own, wandering around trying to find the spaces in behind those three. So it sort of disrupts that defensive line a little bit more. I thought maybe something like that might have tried a bit different, because when Bernardo Silva did find a little bit gaps of space, he was the one who was finding a little bit of success. So moving those three out of position a little bit more might have been a more interesting and possibly a more worthwhile tactic than the one he went for of just sort of matching up with him in the end.
No, I think that's certainly something to consider as well. I mean, looking back at the 11 for that PSG match, as you mentioned, they won 3-1. It was three at the back, Glick, Jemerson, and Raji as they played on Tuesday. But Moutinho was played as sort of a number 10, where it was five across midfield with both Bakayoko and Fabinho in the match. Germain started at this time. Mbappe wasn't even on the bench, but I think there is certainly something to be said for that. But I think that in this match, you have to wonder whether Jardim has too much of a reliance on using certain players. I think Falcao didn't have that impressive of a match for me. I think that with that back three not being creaky per se, I mean, their positioning is wonderful, but they're not the fastest. Whether starting Germain along Mbappe might not have been a better idea. I know that might sound controversial given how impressive Falcao has been, both in the league and in the Champions League. But I think in terms of mobility, if you're still trying to chase the match, you can always bring Falcao on, let him play the last half an hour, perhaps if Juventus are sitting a little bit deeper. But as long as they were getting forward on the flanks, I don't think that playing Germain would have been the worst idea. Again, hindsight's 2020. I think that it's going to be a very interesting summer for Monaco. Recent links have seen them linked with Yuri Tielemans from Anderlecht, and we've also seen links with linking Timothy Bakayoko out. So I wanted to ask each of you briefly, who is the one player that Monaco can't afford to lose? Nathan, I'll start with you.
I think we've already mentioned him, Fabinho. I think especially if they want to carry on playing the formation they want to play next season, Fabinho. I think that the links at the moment are luckily for them not particularly focused on him, but his partner Bakayoko, who's probably a little bit more raw, but also might fit into other teams better in the sense that he's got pretty much one role in any team of being sort of possibly a breaker of play and then break from there, whereas Fabinho is more of a versatile player and I think more worthwhile. I wrote in the GFFM 100 earlier this season about Fabinho that I think he'd be perfect for Manchester City. I think he's absolutely built for that team. I think he can play right back if they need him to. I think he can play in defensive midfield if they needed to as a better alternative to Fernandinho, or next to him in bigger games maybe to add a solid defensive base. I think that the versatility and the ability on the ball and his defensive instincts will be adored by someone like Pep. But they need to try their very best to try and keep him and try and find someone in this market to replace him. Because I like Tielemans, but he would fit better with Fabinho rather than Bakayoko, in my opinion, at least, as a slightly more adaptive playmaker than the other two. Or even he might play in a number 10 role if he does join. I'm not sure so far. But I think out of everyone, I think he's the one they have to keep.
Yeah, I would have to tend to agree. We did see Tielemans a couple of times playing for Anderlecht against Saint-Etienne in the group stage of the Europa League, and I have to agree. I think he's better going forward and wouldn't be an adequate replacement for Fabinho were the Brazilian to leave. Adam, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think I have to echo those sentiments from Nathan. I think Fabinho would be the most difficult player to replace because he's very, not unique, but he's very unusual in his skill set and the way that he goes about his game, and the fact that they play that 4-4-2, it's very, very easy to get overrun in midfield and between him and Bakayoko, but largely down to his mobility and his power and his strength and his ability to both drive play and drive forward Monaco's attacks. That he'd be very, very difficult to replace. And I think Tielemans would be good, but I think actually Tielemans is perhaps a more forward-thinking player, and I like Fabinho as the one next to Bakayoko, perhaps. And although they kind of play very similar roles in terms of their position on the pitch, perhaps I think Tielemans would be one who would like to play alongside someone who's a bit deeper, who could sit and he could push. I think he's probably closer in sort of skill set into Blaise Matuidi a little bit. And he has been insanely good this season. For he's only 20, and he's already got a ridiculous amount of appearances. And I hear that Leander Dendoncker for Anderlecht's very good. Who plays defensive midfield, and he's possibly outperformed Tielemans this season as well at Anderlecht. So it's a very good, some good options. Maybe Monaco are looking at him as well. I don't know, but I think Tielemans would be a good signing. But I think perhaps in a different style of team, perhaps. I think he's a good fit for Monaco in terms of the style of play and the way that their team sort of holds together. He's a Monaco type player, if you like, but perhaps a slightly different tweak in that formation. But Fabinho, for me, would be the one they couldn't really replace. It'd be very, very difficult.
All right. So I think that should wrap our Monaco discussion for the moment. It'll be very interesting to see how they do shape up this season or this offseason. Turning briefly to Lyon versus Ajax, really a thrilling game. Lyon had gone down a goal, one goal earlier. They got a penalty, which Lacazette converted. Lacazette scored again, then from open play. Then about 15 minutes from time, Rashid Ghazal, who would come on, turns into the back post from Bashir Ribas with a decent cross. Lyon pressed for the equalizer to take it, or the fourth goal to take it extra time. They can't quite get it. I was pleased with Lyon's play, but I do sort of question leaving themselves so open so early in the game. My issue would be with Bruno Genesio deciding to start Fekir as a central playmaker. I do know that he had a good assist for Lacazette for the second goal, but I also think that he was often too selfish with the ball at his feet. I don't know whether he sees himself as a number 10. I think he sees himself as more of a striker. And with bearing that in mind, I think he ends up tending to take shots when a pass might be the better option oftentimes. He is fantastic at drawing free kicks. He was on the evening and has been for most of the season. But I just think that since his injury, he's lost a little bit of pace and he's not quite as crafty and doesn't have quite as much vision as he does. And also playing off a lone striker as opposed to Lacazette and another striker, as we had seen when Fekir had that breakout season 2 years ago. I also think that he's not afforded quite as much space. Playing behind it was Lacazette and Quentin Angie at the time. Angie's pace and Lacazette's movement often gave Fekir quite a bit more space. He doesn't have that playing in a 4-2-3-1. I was a little disappointed with Genesio tactically. I also thought that it made Tolisso sit a little bit more deep. If you want to move to a 4-2-3-1 with Tolisso as part of that 2 later in the match, if you're chasing it, you've got it, and you're in good position at that point, great. But I think starting with that wasn't a very responsible choice. I think that they should have opted for a 4-2-3-1. Tolisso played off Lacazette. Tolisso being an option, making late runs into the box, either to be an aerial threat or to play the ball on the ground, I think is a better option. He's decent with the ball at his feet as well. And knowing that he's not as much of someone willing to take a shot, he's also willing to try and involve his teammates a little bit more, cutting inside, be that Balbuena or be that Cornet. So a little bit frustrating with Lyon tactically, but still it was good to see this team not give up and put in a good fight.
Eric, I just wanted to add in, what did you think when you saw the team sheet and saw Nkulu and Diakabe partnering each other again? Were you a bit on edge thinking that it might
there weren't
cost
options? Yep, Yanga Mbiwa isn't fit, and I don't think Mamane is either, considering he didn't make the 18. So
Give you a mild panic.
Yeah, it did. They were all right. I mean, I don't think that they were as awful as they were last time. I think Diakabe in particular looked good getting forward. He was given quite a bit of space, particularly later in the game, to get forward with the ball at his feet. Neither of them really have the range of passing that Mana does, and I think that's what's missing with the Argentines not in the team. But yeah, it frustrating, and that's the thing. From the start, it was frustrating to concede that goal because obviously, as Lyon showed, they have the firepower to score 3 goals, which would have seen them through in away goals. But having conceded that one, it made the task just that much more difficult. So a somewhat frustrating evening, but I think a good send-off for Lacazette and Tolisso, if indeed that is their last European match in the Parc Güell, as many seem to think it is. Just being a bit too gung-ho with that 11 from Genesio from the start. I also might have questioned starting Raphael ahead of Jale. I think that there was a lot of Ajax's good play was coming from Yunus and coming from Ziyech on that left side of Ajax's attack. And I don't think that Raphael did as much as perhaps could have been to cope with them. The quality of balls from both Ziyech and Yunus could have been better on the evening, but we had seen in the first leg, Ziyech and Yunus both have good range of passing, but they didn't have it on this night. And I think that Leon could have been made to pay more heavily had those two been a little bit more on the ball. All in all, though, a decent season for Leon in Europe. I think that going out to Juventus and Sevilla and giving a good account of themselves in most of those matches, say perhaps the loss at Sevilla, I think that there's no shame in that. And getting by Roma in particular in the Europa League, I think makes this a fairly satisfying campaign for Leon, even if the manner of their exit was a little bit frustrating. Anything to add on Leon's season, Leon's European campaign for other few gents?
Genesio out.
Yeah, I would agree with that, I think.
All right.
I think that sums up perfectly.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on now to our predictions game. We haven't had an update on this in a while, but Adam has crept closer. He is now on 75 points to my 79. Nathan, due in part to his vacation, we'll give him a break for that, lingers back at 62.
We get double points from now on. Is that?
So we have 4 matches to preview this week. Again, the prediction scores are 3 points for correct score, 1 point for a correct result. And we're going to have a focus not so much on the bigger teams this week as we often do, but because the top 6 seems fairly set, there's still a bit of a denouement in terms of whether Bordeaux or Marseille will get 5th. But provided PSG win the Coupe de France, both those teams will go in, I believe, at the same stage in the Europa League, the third qualifying round. So there's not really much of a difference there between those two. So let's start then, keeping in mind that relegation is really what the focus will be on over the next 2 weekends, with Bastia, quote-unquote, hosting Lorient. Adam, we've seen from the club that Sylvain Marvo is out for the season. Benjamin Makanjo will miss this match. Now, those two are somewhat erratic, but I think we can safely say that they've been Lyon's 2 most important attacking players this season. Is this too much to overcome? And with that in mind, should Lorient play for more of a draw, or is that too risky given that Dijon and Nancy are playing each other?
It's going to be very, very difficult. I think one person I would definitely add to that list of Lorient's most attacking players is Waris Majid. I know his goal record's been poor, but he's been really good in the last few weeks. He's played with intensity and he's created chances. He's been a good foil for Makanjo. So I think often when Makanjo misses out as well, his performances do increase and he gets into that central role more. And he's probably not as good a finisher as Makanjo, but he still is he can be a competent finisher. So I think he might flourish in that sort of added space if Makanjo's out this week. So I think it's not all lost in terms of attacking third for Lorient. And hopefully Jimmy Cabot can recreate his form of a couple of weeks ago where he was absolutely brilliant against Metz when they won 5-1. And the Lorient fans were singing "Jimmy's on fire," which was wonderful. So they've still got options there. It's going to be difficult to assess how they might set up here because yes, you're absolutely right. With the other games going on, it's going to be very difficult for them to know what to do, obviously, because they're all 10 games going on at once. But I think they've done so well to get themselves into this position, and I think they've got, although their results have sort of dipped a little bit, I think they've got a little bit more momentum than perhaps the other teams around them. And although a draw here would be relatively sufficient, they're 2 points ahead of Dijon, so even if they did get the draw against Bastia, no one's really going to overtake them unless Dijon won and they've got a slightly better goal difference. But it wouldn't be disastrous by any means. But from their point of view, I think they still have to play the same way they have been playing. They still have to attack. They still have to, utilise Philipotto, who's been in good form. Cabo, I imagine, will play now as well. Waris Majid, they've still got some good attacking players. So I think they should keep playing the game, and to play for a draw would be too risky, as you mentioned. I think because losing the game would be make their position a little bit more difficult. So I think they have to be confident and stay the course, if you like, because I think that they're still favourites for this game. I expect them to take 3 points in this game if they play the way they have been playing. So hopefully they won't shut up shop and play for a draw, because I think that's asking for trouble. So still hope for Lorient. I think that they've done enough, but I think they will do enough to stay up as well. So keep them in league, and enough at least to keep them in league for next season.
All right, your prediction then?
I'm going to say 2-1 Lorient.
Okay, Nathan.
I'm going to go for 2-0 Lorient and about 3 Bastia players to get sent off as they realise their fate's sealed.
Right. I'll go with a 1-1 draw. Decent result for Lorient, but not enough to quite see them safe yet. I do want to turn our attention now to the high-stakes match at the top of the table this week, or top of the table, near the top of the table, and that is Bordeaux hosting Marseille. Nathan, Bordeaux will be without their 2 starting center backs to suspension, Nicolas Palois, who is going to be suspended for the rest of the season. No surprise after that tackle on Nodin last weekend. And they're also missing Igor Levchuk for an accumulation of bookings. So my question here then is, who should start at center backs? Jovanovic, the St. Petersburg loanee, looks likely to start, but there's really 2 options for Gourvenec to partner the youngster, and that's Théo Pellinard, who's generally a left back and is a little bit undersized, but has played center back on a couple of times earlier in the season, or Jeremy Toulalan, who has played that role both with Lyon and with Bordeaux in the recent past.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because as you say there, you're picking between 2 options that aren't natural centre-backs, but both of them have played that role. I mean, it's a shame that Nicolas Palois just seems to like a break every so often, I think, doesn't he? He had that big suspension last year after having a bit of a tussle with an official against Rennes. So he had about a 7-game layoff there, and now he's ending his season nice and early so he can get on his jollies nice and early. But in this one, when you're comparing the two, Pellinard, like you say, is a little bit undersized. He's naturally a left back, but he has got a little bit of speed about him. So if they were playing maybe a faster attacker, maybe if they were, say, against a Lyon or something like that, where Lacazette will be up front, I think he'd be the preferred option. But with someone like Bafétimbi Gomis predominantly being the one that they're worried about, at least at centre back, I would start someone with it, and combined with his experience, I think Toulalan's probably the better option in this kind of game where if they win, that practically seals European football, or at least automatic qualification to the Europa League. Pretty much will be sealed at least. I think he's, with that experience, yes, he's not a natural centre back, but he is more of a central defensive midfielder, you would say, throughout his career, and he has played centre back a number of times, both for Monaco when he was there and both for Bordeaux this season as well. So I think he's more of a natural fit. He's more up for the battle probably against Gomis, because he's more of a physical presence and has also got the ability to play out from the back as well a little bit better with his passing range and bits like that. And I've always really liked Toulalan as a player, and I think he's probably their best option, really. I think Pellinard against someone like Gomis might be a bit bullied, and that would be a real worry, because if Marseille get him running and rearing to go with the wingers that they've got in form and their ability to get so many assists, I mean, Morgan Sanson's had 12 assists this season, which is really, really great for him. Then you start to get worried that he might be a target and be someone that they bully upon and really pull out of the game. But it's not an ideal situation, full stop, for Bordeaux. They should really have Palois, and with Jovanovic, it's not as bad. But Toulalan is the best of 2 not ideal options. But I don't think either really help Bordeaux come out really smelling of roses in this one.
Yeah, of course, using Toulalan in central defense does create the knock-on problem of who gets used in defensive midfield. Placiel or Sankare will probably take that role with the other one of them playing alongside Vada in central midfield. But of course, again, Toulalan's tackling and range of passing would be direly missed. Adam, sticking with Bordeaux then, if this team do get to European football, as they're likely to do, where do they need to strengthen in the summer for you? It looks like Benoit Costil is going to come in at goalkeeper. That's been the hot rumor. But it seems to me that central midfield and defensive midfield would be the problematic areas given the ages of Toulalan and Placiel. I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether they have some decent players coming from their academies. Moro Mbari, Zaidu Youssef's a player we've seen earlier this season. Daniel Mancini. And also, the sort of the elephant in the room is Enzo Crivelli. This player's had a good, if someone injury hit season on loan at Bastia, scoring a decent amount of goals for a side that's really pretty poor in attack. So along with that midfield question, how do you see Bordeaux able to incorporate Crivelli into the attack next season if they do indeed decide to keep him?
Yeah, first of all, I really hope they do keep Enzo Cavilli. I was a little bit surprised they loaned him out last summer. I felt like he was sort of breaking into the team a little bit more, and he was looking like a little bit sharper in front of goal. He's definitely very strong and very powerful, and really holds up the play really well and plays other people in. Hasn't got much pace, but I think he's the type of player that would suit their kind of their 4-3-3 that they're playing at the moment. Laborde has a similar-ish kind of profile. He's a little bit more mobile, perhaps, but I think Cavilli would suit the players around him, and he'd be able to sort of bring Malcolm and Kamano and Unas and those kind of players into play quite a lot. And those players thrive off that sort of that opportunity to run beyond the forward and get a shot away or beat a man. And so I think he would suit the team. In terms of where they need to strengthen, I think given how Bordeaux adapted to the Europa League under Sagnol, last season now, which was absolutely terribly, obviously there are caveats to that, one being that they had a ludicrous amount of injuries, the same way Saint Etienne did this season, and that their young squad as it was then, although, excuse me, although they've obviously signed Toulon and Benazit's a bit more experienced now, the young squad really struggled to handle the really difficult schedule, so they definitely need depth. And I think there are a number of areas where they hope to strengthen. I think Ivanovic is on loan, so he'll go back to Zenit St. Petersburg, and I think he's pretty likely to do that. So I imagine they'll need another centre back to come in and support there, because I don't know if Pernard's really ready to be thrown in too often. I think he's probably better at left back, as you mentioned. He's a little bit slight. I don't know if centre back necessarily suits him, and whether he'd be suited to the Europa League either. And he hasn't really played too much since February either. So I think, although he looked good in his sort of little run in the team, but I think to have him as their only third choice centre back, I think that'd be difficult. So I think that would be one area they need to strengthen. I can imagine a number of fullbacks leaving. I think Kunje will leave. I think he's a decent enough player. He would have been a good foil there as well. So they've got a few areas to plug in defence. You're absolutely right with the midfield though. They've got four midfielders. Aaron Barry's. I'm not a huge fan of Aaron Barry, to be honest. Obviously, he's 21. He's come over from South America, and he's got a long way to go. But he sort of started off in the team last Christmas, and slowly faded out and ended up playing mostly to the CFR team, which is fine because he needs to develop as a footballer. But the brief, admittedly very brief moments he's only sort of started twice in the last 6 months or so. Off the bench 3 times, was dragged off at half time in the cup game when Lorient visited. So I don't know that he's someone that'll be ready to fill in those gaps, especially given Toulon and Vassal are 33 and 35 respectively. You'd hope that they'd be looking to add players in that position. And without Toulon, I think I like him at centre back. I think I prefer him to Ivanovic there. The reason it doesn't happen too much is because they haven't really got another natural defensive midfield player apart from Aaron Barry. Vassal, Sankari, Vada, none of them are really. Just because it's never really wholly suited that position. They're much more suited to more central attacking midfield roles. So I think they're going to need another defensive midfielder, one that they can rely on in Ligue 1 at least. So I think that's another area they need to strengthen. I'd honestly like to see another central midfielder come in. They need depth in that area because it's going to be the hardest area to sort of rotate over that busy schedule. Daniel Mancini is an interesting one. You mentioned him there. He sort of dropped out of the team at Newell's Old Boys as well before, but I know Valentin Vada said a couple of times he thinks he's a very, very good player, but he hasn't played at all since joining from Argentina, so he's a little bit of an unknown quantity. Only 20 years old, he may be in a very similar position to Aaron Barry, and maybe a little while before he breaks into a team the same way that Vada did, so they definitely need strength in there. I imagine Menez will leave this summer. I imagine Roland will leave too, actually, so I think those two players will need direct replacements as well. So a busy summer for Bordeaux. I think there'll be a fairly significant overhaul of turnover at least of players in their squad. But I imagine they'll keep most of their premier players. You imagine Malcolm would stay, Toulon will stay, Powell will stay. I like that Karras is being replaced. I think although he's 35, for goalkeeper's not too old, he's never been particularly athletic, and it's always come back to bite him. So Costa's a much better option there. So I think as long as they keep that core of the players who've done well for them, as I mentioned there, Sankari can be included there, Vado can be included as well. I imagine most of those players will stay in the club, so that's positive. But they will need to strengthen and have a lot of depth next season if they're going to get anywhere near repeating their league form this season, but with the Europa League on top, because they really struggled 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, I mean that was a tough group, to be fair, with Liverpool and Sion. I think punched above their weight as well in that group. But I think that point taken, that it can be a very crucial summer for this team. A lot of really intriguing young talent, but how they add to and replace some of those players if they do go. Francois Camino is another player who's been hotly linked with the move away, perhaps to Monaco. But certainly a lot of pressure on that team to keep their improvement up. So score-wise, Nathan, how do you see this shaking out?
I'm going to go with 1-0 Marseille.
I'll go with a 2-1 Bordeaux win. I think we're playing a lot of averages, and perhaps Marseille aren't due for a good match this week. Adam, for yourself?
2 each for me. I think it's going to be a good game.
All right. I think that's probably the one that I'll pick out to watch Sunday evening. So 2 more matches to take a look at, and I want to start, Nathan, with Caen hosting Rennes. Frederic Gilbert is back in training and should be fit to play on the right. His energy and his work rate have really made the difference oftentimes for Caen this season in being able to play with those 2 wingbacks, even if he's not quite as attack-minded as Vincent Bessat on the opposite flank. With that in mind, is he someone that Caen pushed to get back fit for this game? And how do they approach it? A win makes safety mathematical, but they've got PSG on the final match day. And I don't know whether PSG will be on the quote-unquote beach. I know they've got the Coupe de France final left to play, but the league might not be as much of a heavy focus for them. Caen can't really take any chances here, can they?
Not really, no. But at the same time, this is a great game for them to possibly get that win that sees them safe because, as we mentioned with Rich on Thursday, that this Rennes team on Monday, that this Rennes team is dead and buried, really, and not really creating anything. While you shouldn't take that for granted, that should also be seen as a great opportunity. And you're right. I think having someone like Gilbert back and ready, as long as he's fully fit, will really help because getting those wing backs and getting balls into the box for Ivan Santini, who's been so crucial, as we mentioned back on Monday, for Caen this season, for scoring goals and getting goals in those box from heads or from little flick-ons. He's been really great at that. So getting that ball in there and using the width and having the best width you can get is really important to this team. And yeah, I think they should really go with this gun-ho, especially with the first 20, 25 minutes. You're at home, you're against a team that has nothing to play for and has been really dreadful at times this season and has struggled to score goals back at you. So if you grab a goal in this game, that this could quite easily get away from Rennes very quickly. I think that Caen are also the side, especially at home, that tend to rise to the occasion at the moment. As they've done really well against the big teams, especially at home, and they should really see this as an opportunity to make sure they're safe. I mean, a point will probably just about do it, at least for automatic relegation, probably. I know they're playing PSG on the last day, which could be ideal because PSG might be on the beach or preparing for a cup finals or resting, but at the same time, that is the amount of talent you can bring off the PSG bench is probably the stuff of Caen's dreams, so you can't take that for granted. They've also been pretty poor away from home, but I would take it to Rennes. I would, especially for that first half, really, really, really go for it because they've got they've got everything to lose, but at the same time, they have to see results from elsewhere go really against them. I mean, they would need Bastia to win. They'd need Dijon to win. Nancy to win to really pull them at least into the automatic relegation zone. So go for it. Why not? I mean, I can't see the argument of why you would sort of maybe allow a Rennes team that have been so average this season to allow them into a game like this where you risk allowing them to score and then you're playing from behind and you're starting to panic. So go for it. I think playing the negative style is only going to, or to play for a draw per se, is just going to bite them back again, I think.
Yeah, of course, Caen do have a very poor goal difference and can't risk that coming into play. They do need to be sure of this. They have the worst goal difference in the league at present at -28, worse than even Bastia and Nancy. So I tend to have to agree with that there. You need to go for it and see what may come. With that in mind, I'm going to go with a 2-1 Caen win. I do think they have what it takes. I think that they were missing Ryan Rudline last week and still got a good win. Adam, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think Caen will take this one. I'd go 1-0.
Okay. Nathan?
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-0, Cole.
It's hard to not predict a win. It's true. Sorry, Rich, if you're listening, but yeah, Rennes don't seem to have too much to play for in this example. So finally, our big relegation derby, and that is Dijon hosting Nancy. Adam, a loss for Nancy would likely see them gone here in terms of not having a chance to make that playoff spot at the very least. Can they afford to play for a draw, or must Pablo Correa's side go all out? And along with that, how do they approach the matchup that is their overarching strategy?
Yeah, it's squeaky bum time, I think, for Nancy, isn't it? It's going to be very, very difficult for them to start with Saint-Etienne on the last day of the season. They're a point adrift of Dijon as it stands, 3 points of Lorient in 17th. Obviously, I think lose this game and they're done, as you said. Unless Lorient lose as well, there's a chance they could win and Lorient lose on the final day, which would have them level on points. So there's that possibility too. But Dijon have a far superior goal difference, so you'd imagine that if Dijon win this game, they put themselves in a very good position. For Nancy, they did rest Issa Dia last week, who's for me by far their best player, far most creative attacking player, their top scorer. And even though it was against Monaco, they decided that I think Correa decided perhaps that this game was the one that would really, was the most likely source of points between now and the end of the season with Saint-Etienne on the final day. I know that with Saint-Etienne pretty much out of the Europa League, or almost entirely out of the Europa League chase, they might be there for the taking on in that last game, so there's a little bit more hope there, but I think he's definitely prioritised this game. I think they really do have to go for it. I think a draw would be damage limitation, but coming into the final day of the season, I mean, Dijon, I think, go to Toulouse, and obviously there's that visit of Saint-Etienne for Nancy. So with Toulouse on the beach a little bit, Dupraz has done his best to shake things up, but I don't think it's working particularly well. So I would think that that's a winnable game for Dijon as well. So there's a lot of variables that they have to consider, and I think a win here would be massive. And if they could get it, then they'd be in the driving seat to start. But obviously going to Dijon is very difficult. Dijon are decent enough at home. They can also on their day be relatively attacking. So I think that they have to try and go punch here and try and get the 3 points, because anything else will put them in a very, very difficult position. And honestly, call their league and say seems question a week earlier, it would be very, very difficult to see them start, because I think with that fact that Dijon have a much easier final day of the year, you'd expect them to take some points from that to lose game. So I think a win here is not 100% crucial, but it would be pivotal if they could take it. Absolutely huge. And but with Correa, the problem is they just can't score goals. We mentioned it on the pod a lot this season. This amount of strikers they've tried. Hadji's been terrible all season. Darley's been probably the best of a bad bunch, but he wasn't played last week after starting the last 4, so maybe he'll come back in. He's looked okay in the last few games, but it's just going to be getting those goals. And I think with Diony and Tavares up front for Dijon, you have to have them as favourites for this game, and being at home as well. But Nancy, for me, have pretty much nothing to lose, and I'd like to see them attack and go for the 3 points, because without them, I think they'll be relegated.
Do you think, I know this player we've mentioned a couple of times, Alexis Poussin is worth taking a shot at in this match?
Yeah, I think he's good. He's only actually started one game since returning from Clermont on loan. But he came off the bench in 4 successive games tonight. We seem to have been crashing one off the bar and then hitting the post against PSG. I think he's good, and I'm surprised that the last 5, 6 games now, he hasn't even made the squad. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but I thought he did enough to impress over those sort of cameo appearances, and that's 90 minutes against Guingamp, which had a man sent off really early on anyway, so he wasn't really expected to do too much after that playing as a striker. So I think he should start. He would be my pick, but the Correa obviously hasn't seen enough, and he's sort of stuck with his more sort of tried and tested strikers, although they haven't really produced any results. So I would have thought that he would have got more games, but maybe we'll see him on the bench at the weekend, and he can have some effect off the bench again.
I would hope so. I think that he certainly has looked bright enough. What would be your score prediction for this, Adam?
I think Dijon are going to win 2-1, unfortunately, for Nancy.
Okay. Nathan?
I'm going for a Diony hat-trick to send Nancy down 3-1.
All right, I'll go with a 1-1 draw here. a less than ideal result for NLC. That is all for now. Do be sure to tune in Monday and to visit our website, www.getfootballnewsfrance.com, and to rate and review us on iTunes if that is the platform through which you listen to. For Nathan Staples and Adam White, I've been Eric Devin. Until next Thursday, that will be our final show of the season next Thursday. Until then, have a pleasant rest of your week.